Brian Mullen. I'm school counselor at Blanchette. I do the first third of the alphabet, a little bit different for every single grade level, but A through G, H, somewhere in there for every grade level. And Shannon, I'll let you introduce yourself as well.
And I'm Shannon Fleming Bray. And this year I am also a school counselor serving the middle of the alphabet. Last year, or the last 2 years, I was a student support counselor, so more sort of intensive academic support.
You say this year, like you're like next year, you're gonna be something else. We're gonna
Yeah,
try.
who knows? Who knows?
Who knows? We'll try to be consistent though. Okay, and tonight we're just gonna kind of run through some common, you know, issues why kids might not be thriving, might not be, we might not be getting the best out of them, and just run through tips and tricks. Some of it maybe you're gonna say, "Oh, yep, knew that," or "That's common sense," but we're just kind of starting with the basics. And going through and talking about the things that we see most frequently here that can kind of hold kids back or trip them up, and then our best advice as to how to move through that and get to a place where we're not only reaching our fullest potential, but also having a good time doing it. So today, doing introduction, nailing it. We're going to talk about the school counseling program. Like Shannon mentioned, we're doing something a little bit different than we've done in past years. So anybody who's new to the school, it'll just be a overview of what we're doing. And if you're if you've been here for a couple years, then you're going to get the rundown of what's different this year. Then we're going to talk about the main section of what we're doing here. What if a student is struggling? One of your students is just not doing everything that we know that they can do, and talk about some steps and things we can do to get them going back in the right direction. And then we'll have a little Q&A and we'll talk about whatever's on everybody's mind. So, school counseling team this year is myself, Miss Fleming Bray, and Miss Rabe is not with us tonight, but she's the last third of the alphabet listed there. As you can see, a little bit different for each grade level. The reasoning being that this is the breakdown that allows us to have the most equal and equitable caseload. So when it comes down to times when we're going to do something with every single member of a class or grade, this allows myself, Shannon, and Heather all to have similar amounts so that, say, come forecasting, we don't have Heather who has to do 150 juniors, and just because I, of my alphabet, only have 40 or 50. And then the kids in my alphabet are getting extra special treatment, and her alphabet is getting flown through. So that is our attempt. I know it's a little confusing of, am I supposed to go to for, this or that? But hopefully it's not as crazy in individual households. Maybe it's just harder on our teachers, but they'll get over it. So just know where you are, and then you will be with these people as we move through. So your ninth grader is going to stay A through FE, sophomore year. They'll be with me again, junior year, senior year. But it'll just change behind them. And we have Miss Overman. Caitlin Overman is our social emotional counselor. She's also in our office. We work closely with her. The academic side, she leaves to us, and maybe tests are hard or we're falling behind in a certain class. But as we'll talk about tonight, that's often very connected to just how we're feeling, whether it was the chicken or the egg that came first in terms of has class been really rough and really stressful, and now it's starting to feel like our whole life is really rough and stressful, and it's becoming overwhelming? Or is it the opposite, where we were stressed out from other things going on, and now that's making doing geometry really, really hard? So, it could be going either way, or it could be both at the same time, and that's why Caitlin's in our office and works so closely with us. Um, Bigger picture, you might only hear from her if we're going kind of in like a long-term, more acute kind of cases where, it's over several weeks that Caitlin's helping us out. Day to day, where we need a break or something, that's going to be more your school counselor. But Miss Overman is there for support as well. The other side of the new counseling department, the new program, is the college counseling team. So they're going to deal with just college and the application process. So, they'll be with ninth and 10th grade. Oh, for some reason, I've only got ninth and 10th on there. Um, but they've also got their 11th and 12th grade cohorts as well. They're working with 11th graders on the college search, 12th graders on college applications, and ninth and 10th on starting that process in general. So, we won't talk a bunch about them today, but they're here to help as well. So the school counseling department, I just talked about a lot of this stuff, but put it all on here so I didn't forget anything. We talked about social emotional support. We're here for that. Individual counseling, in the short-term basis. We're starting groups for, I think anxiety is going to be the first one. Is that starting up tomorrow, Shannon?
Next week.
Next week. Okay. Um, help with just accessing school resources. I tell the freshmen, start with us for any questions that you have. But that goes for everybody. If you haven't figured something out, just swing by the counseling office and we would love to help you navigate and figure out, how to get through whatever it is that you haven't figured out yet. And that's okay. Um, we've also got the whole of the academic side. Anytime we're in a class and we're thinking, I think I could do better on this if only I could do better on quizzes and tests. That's the counseling office. We'd love to help. We'd love to link you up with a tutor, whether it be the NHS tutors um, here at school, your peers, or an outside tutor, if that's more appropriate. And then in general, just be, as it says on the top there, advocates for our students. Just the person that's in their corner when it feels like nobody else is. And, of course, we know there's lots of people in their corner, but sometimes it can feel like it isn't. But we always want our students to feel like if anybody's on your team, it's the counselors. Um, so when you weren't looking to contact us, the kids can just walk in 113, any passing period, any lunch. Our doors are open. Come on by. Anytime the parents want to speak with us, usually sending an email is probably best. That's what I always say, at least. Shannon, you can speak maybe for more your alpha if you want to, but putting your name in front of my face on the computer while I'm working on whatever I'm working on is great because I see that email pop up and then I say, okay, let me schedule something so that I can make sure not to forget and you get that time. Um, Voicemails come to die in my office, just to be honest. I'm on the school, I'm meeting with people and I don't check the voicemail. But email is usually best for me. And then briefly before I let Shannon take over for a little bit here, commercial advertisement for our new Zen Den in the counseling center, right in room 113. Um, with the new breakdown of the counseling program, we're able to reserve a little space in our office for when we need a break, and everybody does from time to time. So we've got the Zen Den. Kids can come in. They just check in, sign in with Miss Mooring at our front desk and then they can go in there. We give them 15 minutes, and after 15 minutes, we're gonna say, "Hey, we want to have a conversation about something," and if not, okay, enjoy. Glad you enjoyed your break. Head on back to class. Um, but really, a unique opportunity, a cool space, just to take a moment when you need it, and then get back into it. So, Miss Fleming Bray, I'll let you speak if anything you got about the Zenden, or let me know when you want me to move to the next slide.
I mean, the Zenden is really, we launched it last week and kids use it all the time in small groups, individually, just to take a break. It's a really nice addition. Um, so the next slide is navigating BBHS, and there are a lot of new things. I hope that people don't have a lot of really detailed questions about Veracross, right? We moved from Skyward that we were all used to accessing, and Veracross is going to be better for all of us. It interfaces with Google Classroom. So it's a lot easier for teachers and students as things get turned in Google Classrooms. You can see the grades reflected in Veracross. Um, the first progress reports were last Friday, so you probably were alerted by teachers that had happened, and you could look at your kids' grades. If you need help navigating those systems, that would be like an individual reach out, and we would happily explore it with you, how to look at attendance, how to look at grades. It's a learning curve for the whole building, but in the end, it's going to be a much better system. You are probably, I'm sure you're here because you heard about this in the weekly update. That's where all major school events are advertised. Um, and office hours are probably the way that your student is going to most clearly navigate BBHS. Teachers are available half an hour before and half hour after school every single day. They can make appointments. Number one thing I say to kids when they come in saying, I'm having a problem with my teacher, I'm struggling with this, I want to move out of this class, is have you met with your teacher? And teachers want to meet with them. Like they want to understand that a kid is struggling. They want to understand what might be going on. It's really, really the most important place for kids to start is with their teacher, with their counselor, and with their teacher. Um, so I guess we're going to first launch into kind of academic. There's a couple of reasons that kids might be struggling, and academic is kind of our home base. Um, so teens might struggle for, I mean, many reasons because their brains are still developing, right? Their prefrontal cortex because they're distracted, because they come home and they're exhausted from a long day of focusing and they just need a minute to sit on their phone and then they never get off their phone. Um, because they have incredibly busy schedules. And for some kids, that works better, right? Because they know that they've got 1 hour in between practice and that they have to get work done. And for some kids, that's totally overwhelming. Um, and because when you enter high school, sort of the scaffolds that the parent support that had existed and the expectations increase and support from inside the home sometimes decreases. And so we find that kids are sometimes don't know how to pick up that slack that maybe parents or teachers or used to hold. And now we're asking more of them and we're asking them to manage their own um, homework, writing down their homework and their own schedules and their own time management. And those are some of the biggest things that we see. So, why might that be? There's a couple of different reasons. Um, you can switch slides, Brian. Thank you. It could be academic placement. So this is one that we've been talking at the beginning of the year. We talked about a ton, right? We met with every single freshman within the first couple weeks just to say like, tell us about you. Are you in the right classes? Um, we there was a lot of communication about changing classes. So sometimes we work really hard to choose with kids to make sure that they're in the right, that they know where they want to put the right challenge, that they're not choosing all APs because they think that they have to. Um, we try to be very personalized about that approach, but sometimes something is missed, right? Sometimes a kid is in the wrong class. Sometimes they should be in honors. Sometimes they need to move out of honors. So that is a conversation that would happen individually with a counselor. Right now, we're probably past that window. But again, at the next semester, we'll reevaluate. People switch electives, some semester long classes end. So that conversation kind of always continues with the counselor. Overcommitment is a big reason, right? Like we go into these ninth grade classes and we freshman year and we start talking about like who are you going to be in high school, not just what classes are you going to take, what are your grades going to look like, where are you going to be a leader, what are you going to be involved in. And sometimes people think that means that I have to be involved in everything, and it becomes so overwhelming that they can't balance the extracurriculars and the academic pressures and all the social things that they want to be involved in. Overcommitment is a thing we see a lot of, and deciding what to let go of is takes a lot of maturity. So that's a conversation we have with them too. Um, Sometimes academic struggles have a root in um, social emotional things that are coming up. And we'll talk a little bit more. We'll get into that in more detail about how we can support that, how Miss Overman can support that. This is another one that so sometimes as like we talk about as expectations increase exponentially and as sort of supports from the home and like a school that they've been in for a long time, as those supports go away, sometimes we see that kids who have been doing really well academically start to falter. And sometimes that might be that all the supports they were receiving were masking a learning problem or a diagnosis that was missed. So we do have resources, places to direct you if you're wondering. Um, wow, they seem to be struggling much more than I would have anticipated, or maybe we've missed something. So that would be something to reach out to a school counselor about, and we would probably direct you to Alan Linney, who's the director of our learning program. Or it could be a lack of executive function, and that we also at Blanchette, one of the main things that we did with our faculty and staff last year was to work on sort of tier one and tier two interventions. Like, how are we supporting our ninth graders, especially to make sure planners' expectations are being used, that we're helping them build these executive function skills in the classroom? But I hear from a lot of parents saying, I notice my kid really struggling with time management, with organization. So that's also something we're going to go into each one of these things, but that's one that I have a conversation that I have a lot with kids and with parents. I go through a lot of backpacks, look at a lot of like um, different ideas for how kids are tracking classes, things like that. And that sometimes we'll just sit down for half an hour a few different times and look at their process. So those are some root causes. And then we're going to kind of, I think I may have already covered all these next ones. So academic placement is this class right for my kid? Sometimes we can change a class, sometimes we can't. At this point, this would be a talk with the vice principal if we thought it was wrong. The math teachers, they're the ones that choose a kid's math placement based on testing originally, based on how they are performing in their class. So those ones, but then in science also, but the rest of the classes, there's a lot that's a conversation between counselors, between kids, between teachers as we choose the right classes for them. Um, yeah, I guess I just stayed on that one slide. So this is a good question for parents. How do I help my kid decide how much is too much involvement? Um, where are the places that I do want to engage? Um, where where am I putting my time in a way that's life-giving and building leadership and exercising my body, and what is draining for me and resulting in burnout? So sometimes though that is an ebb and a flow in high school, right? People have a season of sports that's really tough. And sometimes we just have to pay attention to maybe something has to drop.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so as we move now, did I cut you off, Shannon? Is this
Nope, that's it.
uh, uh another one that like Shannon said, social emotional causes. I spoke a little bit about that chicken or the egg thing at the beginning. I mean, this one is huge. Everybody can identify with or feel for kids that it's like if we've got other stuff going on and school doesn't feel like a priority, then that makes school really, really hard. And if we're dealing with anxiety or depression or just the beginnings of those kinds of feelings, that can make school not feel very important to kids. And we all know teens and high school kids have lots of stuff going on that they're prioritizing over school. Sometimes it can feel like, um, but if we're dealing with trouble with friends and the friends are at school or the friends aren't at school, then that can make classes and make just getting to school really tough. So always something to kind of go through as you're going through the checklist, okay, we're in the right classes. We know we're academically placed in the right spot. All right. But we're still struggling. Okay, is it overcommitment? Well, we lighten the load a little bit here or there. But still not working out how I want it to. The next place to look is probably, how are we feeling as a person? How is our student doing, just inside of themselves? Um, a great place when you're like, hey, I think this might be going on, is just to send an email to the counselor. You can always have a conversation with the kid yourself or your kid yourself. I know that that is not always easy and not always like particularly fruitful. But if you're still suspicious after you're talking to your student or you're like, something's going on, do you think you could just have pull them aside and have a chat? we would love to. We can also, just give them a quick reminder like, hey, um, pulling you down here today because I saw this class or whatever. I trust that you can get it together. You're missing some assignments. All you got to do is do those assignments and get them in. But I wanted to let you know I'm here to help. I'm here to listen if there's something going on that's stopping you from being able to do these assignments. We'll remind them about confidentiality in our office. We'll reintroduce them to Miss Overman and just make sure they know they've got those supports there. This is one that's hard to always get to the bottom of, academic placement and overcommitment. Those are there's evidence you can see of those. But if we're struggling emotionally or friends or any other social aspect is making school hard, it's sometimes hard to get to the bottom of, but we'll work there. We'll work to get there. Um, this is a bit more about what we've got as our resources here at school. I mentioned Miss Overman is our social emotional counselor. She's for the whole school. She's here to help everybody, all the way to the point of if we get to, doing like an outside of school program, she can help support, if that's what's necessary to keep a kid healthy, then we're going to do that. And we're going to put school on the back burner, but we can help facilitate so that the transition back to school is easier. Um, there's the three academic and social emotional counselors that we mentioned. Um, I think another thing that is part of our program that doesn't get talked except by us is the school-wide SEL programs that we're running. Even our SEL committee is student run, so kind of peer-to-peer programs. We've got a lot of resources, honestly. If your kid doesn't want to talk to you or talk to an adult, we've got other kids that we can get them linked up with. They're not going to do therapy. They're not going to like fix the problem, but we've got people in the school that are trained on, even talking to people who are feeling suicidal or thinking about it. We've got lots of people trained to help. And then that last plug is for the February 3rd, 2026 virtual suicide prevention training for parents and guardians. That'll be done by Miss Overman. And two parents have been helping for the last couple of years who are in the field as well. So that's a great event. Ways that you can support your student in this topic, you're supporting your student's social emotional health. Encouraging independence is great, letting them find the things that they know they can do and they build confidence and then they feel better about themselves and their abilities. Normalizing stress and struggle is a huge one. We're all going through it, and kids definitely in all walks of life tend to feel like they're the only one. And everybody else is having the easy time. Social media is not helping with that. And the more we can talk about, hey, I'm feeling stressed out right now. Here's how I'm dealing with it. Or here's a story about a time that I was stressed out in school or at work or struggled through something. So just kind of, putting that out on the table. Staying connected without hovering, a lot like encouraging independence, but, you know, um, still being there, still, letting them know that you're available. Um, Prioritizing balance, that goes with the overcommitment as well. But making sure that your student knows, hey, what I want for you is to be successful, and let's talk about your and my definition of successful and what you want, and then finding the balance between what you want, what you have to do, um, and what you want to do, and that way we can feel good about ourselves and have our downtime, have the things we enjoy while also getting done what we need to. Healthy friendships, we would all love to foster healthy friendships. Not sure we wrote that down. I'm not sure we have any great tips for it. But always running those conversations, hearing about if you can get anything out of them, hearing about who they're hanging out with, and talking about the good choices that those friends are making, and talking through mistakes if there are.
And that is the SEL committee push in for freshmen.
Yeah, so we'll have sophomores in the classes, in the freshman PE classes, running through a curriculum on that. I guess I didn't, I was thinking about that from a parent's perspective.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes.
But that, yeah, peer to peer. When I go in there for those freshmen or the sophomore presentations to freshmen, I always say like, "Hey, I could stand up here and tell you about what it's like to be a freshman in high school, but you wouldn't believe a word I said." So here's a sophomore. They just did it last year. You have to believe them. Um,
And it's the best. They say that. Oh, I went through this last year. You would not believe when I was a freshman what I had to deal with. It's really, it's really cute.
peer-to-peer stuff is good stuff. And then kind of just with all this, keeping communication doors open, letting your student feel like it's okay to come to you with, this is a struggle I'm having. You know, it's not just that you're going to find out on the report card that Algebra 2 was hard, but that you're going to know every step of the way because they know that you want to know. And then watching for warning signs, which we're going to talk a little bit more about as we get through here. But generally just changes in your student. You know, a kid who used to be doing well is not going to just start not doing well in class without other changes occurring that you can notice before you actually see the grades. We threw in one little tidbit here on drugs and alcohol. We had a recent DEA presentation or assembly at school, which kind of occurred to us that, drugs and alcohol could absolutely be a factor in causing a kid to struggle in school. We won't dive in too much here, but we kind of went through in order of things you should go down the checklist. Academic placement, probably the most likely, all the way down to we're struggling with drug and alcohol use, and that is preventing us from doing well in school. It is surely a possibility. Um, and if that starts to become a suspicion or an issue, definitely a place that the school counseling department would like to push in and provide support and help as we go through that.
Mhm.
And also something that we're growing as a department that we're practicing together. I think it's one of those things that you're like, oh, I'd rather that not be a problem, but it absolutely is. And for some kids and for plenty of high school kids across the country, so it's not something that we're gonna ignore or pretend isn't real. And we're gonna work together until we can be as helpful and productive as a department on that as we can be.
This one is maybe a little out of place, but I think that if you think that your child would like to have learning supports or a learning plan at Bishop Blanchette, they do need this additional testing for diagnosis. And so if you need resources to have there's some free resources in the city, some long wait list. Or there's ways for us to explore getting tested through public schools. So if you think you're interested in pursuing testing or your child might need that, reach out to your school counselor because yeah, there's ways that we can help you access that or answer questions about what you might be seeing. So this big slide, this is about executive function skills, right? And the point is kind of like since your kid has been little, you've been like developing strategies and teaching techniques for them to manage their behavior or to help them cope with things, right? You have them hang up their backpack right by the door and you have them empty it out on the table in the afternoon to see what papers came home and you were giving them always from the time they're little these little tips and tricks that we see and it's different for every kid, right? So we know our kid, and as we move into adolescence it's the same principles that we use for intervention and for support, but it's less about giving direction now and it's more about negotiation, right? We're working with our kid to say, because ideally it's not the same. Ideally, our 10th grader isn't coming home and we're saying, now empty out your backpack, now do this, right? Because we're slowly helping them build the muscles that they need to practice to be able to survive and thrive on their own. And it's hard to do because then we're afraid that if we let go or if we don't go through their backpack or if we don't check their Google Classroom, that things are going to get missed and it's going to affect them in a way that they can't come back from. But that isn't true, right? Because what will really affect them in a way that they can't come back from is if they never build the schools skills and muscles that they need to do this alone. So that's where you, parents, and us work together to say, what are the muscles, what are the tricks, what are the skills that this kid needs to be able to survive on their own, so that we can start taking away the scaffolding, so that we can start trusting them to do these things. And because we've empowered them, right? So some of these, I thought it was interesting. Most of these are from the Smart But Scattered book. And their main thing is to take a look at these as adults and to say, oh man, where are my strengths and where are my weaknesses? And all of us probably through professional lives and personal lives have a good sense now of where our growing edges and what we're really good at. And it is helpful to ask that question of ourselves, because when it's such a humble place to then to ask your kid, what are you really good at and what do you need to work on? And I'll say of this list, the four that stand out the most that I see with kids are task initiation, right? Getting started. This feels like a mountain of work. This feels like a huge task or a huge project. Doing the first step, staring at that blank page, right? That task initiation, that's a tough one. Planning and organization, right? What is my, I have this big project. How am I going to get there? What is my plan for completing my homework today or for studying for this test that I'm going to have to know 100 kinds of sharks or whatever they have to do in marine biology? Um, Organization, right? We see a lot of maybe kids don't have all the right things that they need, the right folders, or maybe they just don't take the time to put the papers where they need to go. That's a big problem. Lots of lost things, made systems of organization. And then lastly, time management. Those four are the big ones, right? If I have a busy day, and they do, how do I manage a block schedule? How do I manage a sport or a play and also complete sometimes hours of work? Um, so these executive function skills are just ones that um, there's some tips for working on at home. And also please use us, right? This is exactly what we do, is help reinforce some of the strategies. And it really doesn't work if it's just happening at school and not at home, or if it's happening at home and then the kids aren't using it once they get to school, right? It does have to be reinforced. So the four keys to success, all successful kids do these things, like they write down all their assignments. And this can be a tough one. A lot of kids think, I just look at my Google Classroom, and it's an easy to miss things that way. They turn in all their assignments on time. It quickly feels like once you miss a few and then you've got current work to catch up on, it quickly feels overwhelming for a kid once they fall behind. Budget their time, right? Do green homework on green days. That's a big one. Gold homework on gold days. That's really, really important, because if they hit a snag, if they feel like, oh, I've got questions about this Green Day homework, but now it's due tomorrow. So if they do it the day it's assigned, then they can go in the next day and ask questions, get clarification. But if they wait until the day before, then they're not prepared to turn in their work. And then ask for help, right? That's the big, big one. Like, make time to go see a teacher.
Okay. We've got some of the main tips that we could think of for how parents can support at home. Some of this is definitely going to be seem a little obvious, which is great. But we want to just get it all out there so that in case there was something that you're looking through and you say, oh yeah, okay, let's add that one in too. So establishing structure at home, creating or providing the ability to have consistent routines for homework and meals and sleep. Obviously, like we said, the kids are super busy. So anything and everything that can be done to kind of make sure that they know what to expect and when to expect it can make their lives easier. Prioritizing that balance, making sure that you're cheering for them to have some time to themselves, but also get back to the things that need doing, allowing for there to be balance so that we can stay working and stay happy and healthy. Um, Family calendars have seen a lot of success. Kind of just like we said, like modeling, like everybody doing it together. You can let them know this is a really busy week for me. Maybe that starts a conversation about how it's a busy week for them as well, and you get to talk through that a little bit. But um, just staying organized with everybody when things are due and when we need to be where, so that we know when we will or will not have time to do those things that will be due. And then helping them set goals, talking through the things that they want to achieve, be it long term, or even just short term, like this week of what are we going to get done this week or today so that we can and keep the line moving. Tip number two is teaching about planning and organization. Right with that family calendar is, kind of putting together the week and talking about how things are going to look, organizing your week and talking about what they can expect. A dedicated space for homework slash studying. I think this one is super tough, but can be very valuable. You know, there's people moving all around doing all sorts of things. I just heard somebody in my house screech. I don't know if you got all did. But if you're able to have a place where, this is for work, this is for studying, and this is not where the TV is on. This is not where we're also eating. This is, fill in the blanks. But having that space where we can focus on our minds and focus our efforts can be huge. And then use of a planner. We've got some in the counseling office. If that is a barrier, or you're like, I don't know which one's kind of going to be good. Ours is super simple. It's nothing complicated. Anything will do. But getting in the habit of using that planner and going through it with your student can be enormous in terms of staying organized. And then just helping them to by providing those tools for them, such as the planner, or whatever it is that's going to work for them. Like, some schools will mandate the planner that they give out. That's not us. Whatever works for you. But as Ms. Fleming Bray said, just seeing it on your Google Classroom as you scroll through all your class or click around your different classes that's not it. Google Classroom is helpful. It helps you stay organized in some ways, but you're going to need your individual planner or a similar tool in order to really stay organized. And then, do not know how to use this thing. Go back. And attendance is huge. If we're missing classes, we start to feel overwhelmed with the work that we have to make up, and then falling behind. But being there every day can be such a way of removing barriers, just because it doesn't seem quite as monumental to do the one day's work as it does three or four or worse. So really promoting, making it easier or removing those barriers of getting to school, whatever it is that's, keeping us away in the morning. And it can be lots, all the way to the social emotional side of things. But working to make sure that we're there every day can be very, very helpful. Supporting time management. We've talked about I always say this wrong, Pomodoro technique. That was kind of in the executive function section of just, hey, we've got limited time to get stuff done. So let's, instead of just saying, now I'm going to work for an hour, let's do 25 minutes. Then we'll take a 5-minute break. We'll go do, whatever we like to do to have a little downtime or rest, or maybe it's take care of something else, but at least it's not sitting down here working. And then we come back to it and we do a little bit more. And, kind of implementing that every 30-minute session there or section can be helpful in that it doesn't feel like now I have to just sit here and work. No, you don't. You work to work for 25 minutes, and then you're going to get 5 minutes and you use it as you need to. Setting limits on screen time during homework, uh, super tough around here, that's for sure. But always very helpful because you're just not as productive when you've got two things going on in your brain. And we've got screens all around us, but limiting that can for sure be helpful. And then prioritization is we've seen some kids once they figure out how to prioritize, really turn a corner because it can feel like it's just so much to do. It's so much to do, and it is a lot to do. But if we can pick out what's most important, what's most urgent, and that's where the planner can help us decide what's most urgent, we can do that first. And once that's out of the way, those other things can feel a lot more manageable once the big things are gone. Um, and then we talked about modeling a couple times, but talking about your process, how it works for you, what has worked for you, what has not worked for you. Just letting them learn through you can be great. I think that's right. Yeah. Note taking. This one's a tough one, especially modern world. We're on computers. We're typing. It's not the same art form that it used to be. But in general, staying organized with your notes. Making sure you got dates. Headers and titles, just so that as you're flipping back and trying to find where did we learn about this, you're not just looking at a sea of whatever you typed or whatever you wrote, however you're doing it. But you can actually reference back to the information that you're trying to find. Um, Very important. And then, I mean, outlines are great if you're getting that organized. That can be awesome. But we can help work with the kids in figuring out their system. And then anything, even doodling we wrote on there, like just something to if we're keeping our attention in class, whatever works for you. We want to find that system that's going to help your student, thrive in their classroom. And if it involves a doodling or a little fidget thing, like tremendous. There's not rules in terms of what it takes to what works for you for learning. Um, but let's find out what it is quick so that we can get going.
That one is, though, I will say, like in kids with ADHD or with like anytime focusing is an issue, like I would move away from notes on a computer and towards notes on a paper just because the act of like moving your pen and filling things in, and it really is helpful for. I'll take notes with kids sometimes as practice. It's super helpful to take notes and doodle as so that you take in and retain information during a lecture.
Absolutely. I've got a spectacular doodle from our team meeting earlier today.
We
Uh,
practice what we preach.
and then we got, building, working towards independence here. Like, you know, we're college prep. We're working towards the next thing after high school. The goal is not just to be great at high school, but to be ready to succeed and to thrive afterwards. Um, So slowly but surely moving away from helping them out to the point that they didn't actually do it. We parentheses rescue here. I think that ability to say, "Hey, this is your responsibility. This is your thing, and it didn't get done, but that's okay. Let's fix it next time. Let's take this different step this time. Let me help you with this instead of all of it." Um, Talking about what's your plan to finish this, or like I just said, what's your next step or your first step even. Um, and then celebrating effort and progress along the way, not just that the grades improved and the grades will improve. But we talk to kids that say, "Oh, I got the same grade on this test as I did the last test." And they say, "Ah, I know you did, but there's different stuff on this test. And let me remind you of the three things that we did that were a lot better this time around, that were a lot better habits this time around. And now we're building, it's not a guarantee that the numbers are going to go up in any given week, but we're building better habits and systems, and that overall is going to improve." We talked about quiet home space. The weekly family check-in can be great, where we model um, the visual reminders like whiteboards or that family calendar that we talked about. And then teaching the kids how to use the planners. We would love to help with this as well. That's something that we go through, especially once it's gotten to a point where we're like, "Oh man, this is the number one thing. The reason that class is hard for you is because we are disorganized, is breaking it down and getting organized, and then slowly teaching them to do it themselves. Um, but if you can get ahead of that and handle that at home, all the better." And then, as we've kind of stressed a lot of times, we talked about this, Shannon and I, as we were making this. We said, does it feel like we're repeating ourselves a lot? And I assured her that there's definitely times that we repeat ourselves, but that it's because it's important. And we just want to make sure everybody hears encouraging balance. Yes, we're your school counselors, but we're not just here to say the most important thing is grades in school. You know, you cannot do well in school if you do not have some balance in your life. If all you're doing is school, you're going to start to do that worse than you would if you had some balance, some other things that you enjoy, some other activities and ways that you spend your time and use your brain. That's going to actually help you to do better once you dedicate your time and your brain to school. Shannon, I don't know if this is yours or not, but I am tired of talking.
Yeah.
Red flag.
So some chronic red flags, some reasons to really worry might be if you find my child is consistently missing work, consistently not realizing that there's many missing assignments and maybe a teacher is reaching out, that's a problem. Every kid is going to miss one every once in a while. But chronic missing work, extreme stress or anxiety, right? Kids are pretty good about naming how they're feeling. And so we pay attention. And if your kid is often feeling overstressed and over anxious, reach out, check in with them, reach out to us. Withdrawing things from things that they normally enjoy, choosing not to go out with friends or do activities because they feel like I have to do all of this work. Um, yeah, so no longer enjoying things. And patterns of conflict around school or work. So being really resistant to getting started or not wanting to go to school, or those are some red flags and good reasons to reach out. So these are your takeaways. Provide structure, not control. Um, I mean, these are hard things, I think, because we want our kids to thrive. We want them to do well, and we've spent a lifetime learning certain things to do, and we want to teach our kids, so they learn from our mistakes. But the thing about offering them the opportunity to do this themselves is that then we're launching kids that can really be successful. Build executive function through consistent routines, right? And that does mean you said you were going to do this, checking in about it. Encourage independence. I loved the questions that Brian's asked, right? Like, what's next? What's your plan? Not like, let me tell you what's next. And then balance academic support with emotional well-being, right? That's a kid that really thrives. And thriving is about more than just getting good grades, right? Thriving is about having a confident, resilient um, kid with balance in their life. So that's what we all want, and hopefully these are some ways that we can get there. I know I have a junior here, right, at Blanchette. I'll have a ninth grader next year. I know that the struggle is real for finding that balance between supporting them and letting them take the reins. I know it feels hard, um, but that's why we're here too, for you to reach out and say, can you have this conversation? Or help me have this conversation? And it's really, really important. I can't tell you how grateful we feel when we can say, okay, what do you need from your parents? You need them to take your phone after school? Do you need them to? Kids can articulate some of those things. And when we're working together, it's great. So I think that's it from us. I don't know if people want to have